resume record.
Yeah, so if we can just fill in those missing names.
Okay,
Okay,
yeah, I don't see anything that,
I'll move approval of the minutes.
I'll second.
excellent, thank you both. We'll move to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, seeing no objections or abstentions, meeting minutes are approved. Excellent. Emily, town plan chapter assignments.
Yeah, so at the last meeting on February 19th, we talked about the new town plan draft, goals,
Yes.
actions and strategies. And we sent around a document. It's a large Word document.
The commenting and reviewing worked really well this time, whatever you guys did, it was,
Yeah.
yes, so much better to be able to get in.
Good.
I've always had trouble getting in, this time for some reason it worked, this method, so,
Good.
Yeah, it worked for me too.
yeah. Usually like pops up a prompt to log in, and then I think it doesn't like which account I'm logging in as, and it says you don't exist on SharePoint, and I'm like, oh, okay. But
Yep,
this is better.
SharePoint is
Finicky.
sometimes very finicky, yes.
Yeah,
So last meeting, you guys divvied up the chapters. Gary, who's not here again, got divvied up on the maps. And everyone was to look over chapter 13. The goal was to have everybody have a couple high points to give feedback on today. I didn't get the agenda out until Monday. So if things need to bleed over to the next meeting, there's probably a little bit of time for that. But we do have a fair bit of time today to dive into the chapters. Okay.
Excellent.
mine should be pretty quick to go through if you want to start with 15 through 17, David. Up to you.
Yeah, I kind of think that we should probably start with chapter 13, just
Okay.
given the fact that, hopefully most have a chance to review it.
Yeah.
Yep. We got
So
it open.
let's start with the relevant one, and then I think all of them can be kind of quick, afterwards.
Before we get into it, I just want to say, kudos to the planning office. I think the layout and usability of this version of the plan is really nice. I like the tables. Maybe that's just because my brain is table oriented, but the actions, the strategies. I like the responsibility column. Time frame is great. Yeah, nice job.
And can you just remind me, this is not how the general public's gonna actually get it, right? Like every one of these is gonna get blown up a little bit, or is it gonna be released in this sort of style and format?
Good question. So right now on the Williston 2050 website, there is a different version of this document. So we have two versions. One is for staff and committees to comment on, and the other is for the public to comment on.
Okay.
I think so far the only comment we've gotten has been like one grammatical thing. So no one's really engaged with it yet. When this moves through the formal public hearing process, it'll look a little bit more finished than this. So we'll break out the chapters. They'll have their brief introductory narrative with some tables and graphs
And
and
more
citations.
images, right? I know that was one of the goals, was to make it like more visually
Mhm.
engaging.
Yep, the images will be in that narrative section, so each chapter will have a few. We're gonna try to keep the text really brief. We're gonna bring back the 3 things to know, the 3 things people said, and then, of course,
Okay.
all the images. We probably won't intersperse images in throughout these tables, and I'm working on. It's probably gonna be a Word document just because that's something everybody in our office can access easily as compared to InDesign. So it's gonna look a little bit more polished than this, but still very simple, and easy to follow.
Okay.
Are you planning to do an InDesign version for the final publication or
Probably not, I
a
think.
lot of work?
It's
probably
a
for
lot of
little
work,
bit.
yeah, and I think by doing the three things to know in that order,
Okay,
that really conveys the message. We might be able to throw some icons and graphics and make it look a little bit more InDesign like.
yeah,
And maybe some of the cover pages or image pages could come from like Canva or InDesign. But the core of it with the text and the tables is going to be Microsoft Word.
Okay. So I guess the method of feedback here, for the most part, I made a couple of edits, which I'd be happy to walk through. But why don't we start at the beginning of chapter
objectives.
13? Yeah. And then I guess we can just walk through this, and if you see your comment, I'd ask the commissioners to just jump in and say, that's my comment, but we'll more or less try to go in order. And I guess the point of that, I would only be for discussion or clarification of these comments. I think they're largely directed at you, Emily, because you'll be the one interpreting these and making edits, right? There might be a couple of things where we might want to discuss, but
Your first comment is a good one, David, about definition of conserved. I didn't know if the narrative's gonna explain how we're classifying conserved at this point in time, but it should, because otherwise
Yeah, what do you guys mean by conserved?
permanently protected, not just through bylaws is what my brain says. That's how we calculated like the ERF documentation around the Article 6 stuff was, we didn't count just open space parcels.
Including working lands, correct? That are conserved.
Including working lands that are
Yeah.
conserved, but not including working lands that don't have a conservation easement on. them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Something that can't turn into developed
right.
land
right.
permanently.
There was something in this that I was reading last night, so obviously we were reading a lot, a little foggy as to where, but there was a reference to the value proposition, which is that if you get one of these easements, you pay the property taxes of what
Yeah.
it isn't developable. Whereas if you don't have the easement, you pay the property taxes as if you could develop it. I didn't quite fully understand or appreciate that, as not really a landowner other than a house in a subdivision. So that didn't quite land with me as far as like a description. And I guess conserved kind of didn't land in the same way either, because it almost sounded like you could give up that easement and then pay higher property taxes and then develop it. And I thought that the point of easements were supposed to be more or less permanent, right?
Yeah.
So I would probably just say this could probably be fixed quickly by just adding permanently
Yes.
preserved or permanently conserved.
Yeah.
Yeah, the like definition, just providing a definition in the narrative portion might help us. Um. Like the Conservation Commission has defined. As definitions at the state level continue to be worked, the definition at the town level at this point is. Something that has a conservation easement
Yeah.
on it.
What if like by 2050 Williston has permanently protected 30% of its land area? And then say like through conservation, conservation methods, techniques, something along those lines. Conservation measures.
Conservation is really broad.
Who's the person who came to talk to us from the state? Do you
Oh,
remember
yeah.
that woman came and she talked about, she gave a presentation and it was about the state's work to try to define this.
Yeah, I think they're still, because I think they
Yeah.
didn't want to include working lands, that's why I mentioned it.
Interesting.
We're saying conservation easements and acquisitions. Whether that's a town acquisition or
I think
land
that's
trust
better than what we had.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's better too. All right.
Okay.
Let's see. I have a comment in the next section. I apologize. I'm just gonna go from comment to comment. And if it's yours, jump in. Climate change mitigation usually refers to greenhouse gas reductions. And I believe you mean resiliency.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because resilience can be inclusive of mitigation.
Yeah, or mitigation of the impacts of climate change. Instead of mitigating the climate change itself. So, yeah.
Okay. Reed, you've got the next comment.
Yeah, my computer's frozen. What's it say? Is it showing?
Contributions necessary change.
Oh, change to contributions necessary to meet conservation goals. So, okay, the word significant. In this one, where is it?
Local food producers.
No. My screen wasn't frozen. Oh, there we go. Now it's frozen. Okay, so.
This is a question about what is a significant contribution to the ERF?
Oh, there we go. 13.1. Yeah, so it's the first action. So it says significant contribution to conservation efforts. We're trying to be more specific than that, which we're trying to get down to how much money do we need to actually meet a specific goal. So I thought you should say, to make contributions to conservation efforts, necessary to meet goals or
30 by 50.
yeah, necessary to meet 30 by 50. Yeah, that would be a very simple way to just the word significant didn't mean anything to me. I thought it could be interpreted many different ways. Like maybe 50,000 is significant. Maybe
Right.
like what is significant? So
Right, well, the significance, I guess, is dependent on like the market,
it is, yeah.
like.
Yeah, so we're trying to incorporate those market factors into our
Could
budget.
we say something, go in a slightly different direction
Please.
and say something like, allow the town to work toward conservation of high priority parcels for in town, something like that? Because the
Yeah.
significant contribution, I agree, is very vague. So we want, and this is an action item, so we do want to be specific. And the specificity in my mind here is conserving those parcels that we have identified as high priority for conservation or even medium priority.
And I'm gonna just push back a little bit on that and be able to, by saying you want to be able to go to the town select board and say what is being proposed is not a significant contribution, and a significant contribution is, you know, what we recommended in our November memo, right? And so I think I actually like the word significant contribution, but I like your thought too, Eric, which is that we should be making recommendations and the select board should be approving budgets or going out to voters, which had a great success. We'll get to it later.
Yeah.
That is proportional to reaching this goal of 20 by 30 according to the parcels that have been identified.
Yeah, in line or in proportion to, those are good words because it's not a specific number. The number can change, but it's about how does it move us along at the right pace to reach our goals.
Right.
Yeah.
So that I think so. Emily's working on some new language. That's good. Are you sharing your screen, Emily? I just want to make sure that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Good. So the new language, significant contributions that are proportional to reaching the 30 by 50 goal for high priority parcels based upon market conditions. I think
I think
that's
that's pretty good.
pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. You've done this before, Emma.
Yeah, Emily, thank you so much for all your work.
Oh, my
This is
pleasure.
Such a giant task,
Oh.
wow.
We did skip my other one, so now I see it now that my screen's working. So on 13.h, David, for the objectives at the top, I had a comment about.
And 13D is related.
Yeah, I made a comment. Yeah, about like the. I feel like it needs to say something about the spirit of town-owned ag land management, like managed in a way that minimizes harm from things like fertilizers, pesticides, tilling, machinery use, or even enhances natural resource conservation. Something like mentioning sustainable agriculture, mentioning nature-based solutions, which is like working with nature to make things happen instead of fighting against it. And then there is another place. Maybe it's just a note for you, Emily. There's another place in the document that does talk about this. And I put a comment there and said, hey, this really should 13H should tie into this because it did talk about like regenerative agricultural practices on town-owned parcels and that kind of thing. So I don't know what the words are, but it seemed like it was missing the spirit of it. In a section called conservation resources, it felt weird to say that the primary goal of town-owned agricultural lands is to benefit and strengthen local food systems, which is a great goal, but is it a conservation goal? Didn't seem like it was.
Well, it's land use, isn't it? Yeah.
If you want to steal some language from the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, some of their language includes things like encourage for agricultural lands, obviously, encourage stewardship of healthy soils and clean water.
Mhm. That would probably cover it.
Yeah, I
The
think
soil,
so.
the water, the things that get impacted, right, by machinery and chemicals and not
Mhm.
planting cover crops, things like that, so.
Yeah, and the healthy soils initiatives usually include things like no-till and cover crop practices
No,
to
that's
keep
great.
for soil retention and soil health.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Eric. Yeah, Reed, it looks like your computer may have just updated because I see your additional comments now.
Okay, it finally synced.
Yeah, I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
Emily, I'll drop
It's-
that into the chat for you.
Yeah, I've got that little quote and clean water.
Right. I think we're good on the objectives. I think we just touched on them both.
Yeah, does 13H belong in this section though? I just wanted to check like what. Is there
It
another
seems
section?
it seems kind of redundant, or at least very similarly aligned with D.
Mhm.
I was wondering if we could just leave D and take out H, or whether H belongs in another section around like community health, community food systems and.
Well, isn't this specific about town-owned
Mhm.
ag lands? It looks like D can be very
Oh, okay,
broad.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, you're right, it is town owned versus D is just in general, food is produced.
I didn't even know the town-owned ag lands. I mean, easements.
Across
sure,
from
but-
the fire station is the most visible one, probably.
Right, the Mayhem Farm. There's one on Mountain View Road near the fire tower that's just like hayfield. And then like the
That's the one you're saying is
meadow,
behind a gate.
Yeah,
the meadow behind Lambert Lane.
Mhm. So the one across from the fire station is leased to a farmer,
Mhm.
so that's why it's getting worked, but it's not worked by the town.
Mhm.
Okay.
So 13H. Is there another section of the town plan that you think it could fit into, Emily? Since it's about food systems. And not about conservation?
Honestly, I don't think so. Because food systems are a part of a way of, if they're done in ways that grow resilient soil or working with habitat,
Okay.
like food systems can be a conservation
Mhm.
method. Like even our forests are,
Yeah.
producing lumber.
Okay, that's right, it could be lumber, okay,
Working ones, yeah.
yes,
And
so,
like the only other place for the town owned might be in like the departments and services, but. It might get lost there as
yeah.
why are we talking about doing town ag things and,
So can 13H end with the same language, so local food systems by using using practices that steward healthy soils and clean water. I hate to reiterate it, but especially on town-owned parcels, I think when we think about leasing town-owned land to farmers, it needs to be clear that the objective of the town is to do it in a way that's not gonna have a counter effect on our water and soils.
I'm stealing some of your language from the other ones.
And should we put, an additional, besides local food systems, if we're talking about working lands, local. Wood products, I mean. That's not food, but it's,
Yeah.
I don't know,
Like forests and agricultural lands.
yeah,
Yeah, you can wordsmith it more
yeah,
Yeah,
outside of this meeting, but
yeah,
my point was just it was missing something that showed that it had an impact on conservation.
right. Yeah. Yeah, certainly local. Yeah, using, yeah. I'm just seeing a lot of people have a really hard time with cutting down any trees, but if you don't use local lumber. Then you're using these intensive systems like concrete and bringing wood in from other places, so.
right. Yeah, the Ethan Tapper model.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, are we good on objectives?
You know, looks like the next comment's here is on 13.1.4.
I'm putting the comments made it in here.
Yes, I did see some LMs.
Oh, you did, okay, good.
I guess this kind of points to, this kind of points to a general trend that I've noticed and I started pointing out, which is that some of these like really broad, really, time intensive actions are put wholly on either the Conservation Commission or the Select Board. And to do this right, to do an ERF policy to address equity and inclusion would be a significant undertaking that really would require staff time and a commitment from, you know, probably the planning office to really put time and effort into it. You know, it's not something that can be done alone by the Conservation Commission. So what is, I guess, I'll start with a broader question, which is some of these actually did have planning staff identified.
Yeah, I'll check in with Matt and Melinda on this one. Like I know there's other chapters that talk about wanting to have parks and open spaces in the growth center where there's currently no public parks. But I wonder, there's probably some other goal or action in here about looking at town policies for how they address equity and inclusion. And maybe it's better for the ERF to be nested in there, like if you're looking at town policies generally.
An example of a policy that could be looked at is the ERF policy.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and it's probably easier to do it
Yeah.
that way. You know, taking the methodology to various town policies rather than doing them one at a time across different departments or.
Agree.
And I think the
Work plan.
consistency across policies would be really valuable to have the language be like crafted at the same time for all the policies as opposed to one-offs by us and then another one by staff and.
Yeah, I think that, I think the Conservation Commission should be consulted in in any ERF. I'm sorry, in any equity and inclusion changes that may be made. But I just don't think that we're in a strong position to come up with those recommendations on our own.
The optimist in me says it's a matter of adding one sentence to the policy that says, in considering expenditures from the ERF, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know what language that means. Again, it would have to, there'd be some research. by staff, and it would need to be consistent with other policies. So if there's another place it could go, I think it's better than having it here.
Right, or update the ERF priority map. Like that would be a good place to consider.
Yes,
Um,
that's the weighting equations that we use to apply
Right.
to the map. That we would need to update to address equity and inclusion.
mhm.
Okay, thank you.
In response to the policy change. Yeah.
Right, yeah, Laura, I'm not seeing yours. Do you?
I didn't make many, because you had already gone through it, I didn't
Okay.
make many, so it'll be in here somewhere.
Okay. Great. So I've got another comment on 13.2.1. Phasing outreach, and acquisition. At a pace that ERF can keep up with. I just think that so if you read this, Conservation Commission will explore ways municipalities and land trusts to engage in outreach to private landowners, then develop an outreach program for large, high priority parcels and smaller parcels that are often difficult to conserve with traditional conservation easements. I think we've got a phasing problem here, right? After this year's budget, we'll have roughly 500,000 in the bank, which, you know, it starts to get into the realm of like, that's starting to get some purchasing power. But then as soon as you use it, it's gonna get bought down and you're gonna have to wait several years until you've got purchasing power again. And so I think that this needs to address that there needs to be a long-term strategy and a sort of this just kind of seems like you've got all of the money sort of at your disposal, and that's not going to be the practical case. That there needs to be a phasing of these attempts. And in my mind, I'm kind of thinking about it like there's like 3 tranches of like, well, if these parcels came up for bid like right away, that would be a priority, or if these, you know, and then maybe these 3. They came up to bid, like that's a medium priority or low priority or like longer term. I'm just not quite sure how to think about that. And I don't think we need to come up with the solution here. But I think that this should reflect that there needs to be like a time-based strategy to using the ERF for priority lands. So I don't know. Thoughts on that, Reed?
Yeah, what if 13.2.1 was reduced down to just doing the research on what do other municipalities and land trusts do to bridge the gap so that all types of parcels there's a mechanism to conserve all types of parcels, regardless of their size and so on. Because we already have down below 13.3.2 that says we'll seek to conserve smaller high priority parcels that are more difficult to conserve using regional land trusts. And so those could be partnered together. One is doing the background work to figure out how do we do that, and then 13.3.2 is about actually going out and doing some of the.
So what is 13.2.1 about then?
13.2.1 would be to explore ways that municipalities and land trusts engage private landowners about conservation of different types of parcels. Because today, the only ones we've been able to work with partners on are large ones, like when we thought about Glazer, nobody's interested in Glazer because it was too small from like a land trust perspective. It's too small, it's not wooded, only partially wooded. So like we have this gap where like above a certain threshold, we've been able to work with lots of partners, but then below that, we just have to either straight up buy it or the landowner has to choose to try to find somebody to hold a conservation easement on it.
So I'm kind of hearing more of like a development of best practices guide.
Yeah. It's like an acumen thing. We're trying to build up our toolkit on different ways to approach different types of parcels.
So I think these should probably be broken up into 2 different actions then, because if if that's consistent with what the first half of this sentence was, then that's sort of like a step, that's an action in itself, which is to essentially come up with a best practices and guide and strategy for how to engage with your private landowners. And then the second step is to actually go out and do that, to actually have an outreach program.
So 13.2.1 could be do the research, and maybe instead of saying, maybe it can stay but be simplified and say, outreach to private landowners, comma, and then develop an outreach program for parcels of varying sizes. Because it might be a different conversation if it's a large parcel where we know we can work with the existing land trust, and it might be a different approach for parcels below that threshold.
Yeah.
And then,
No.
yeah, doing the actual taking action to try to conserve parcels is in 13.3.2.
Mhm.
I really don't like the word explore. What?
Research?
Would it, no, I was thinking we'll develop best practices.
Mhm.
Okay.
Or develop an outreach program based on best practices
Yeah, that's
from other
better.
municipalities.
And land trusts. Yeah. Does that work for your brain, David? So the primary action is to develop the outreach program based on best practices.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of phrasing this than what we had, so I think it's an improvement.
And we can probably shorten the rest of that one down significantly, Emily, to like private landowners of parcels of varying sizes.
Mhm.
I don't know that we specifically need to say that smaller ones have been difficult to conserve. Because the best practices would cover all types.
Another, now that we've sort of clarified this, I would also put this one in the bucket of really nice to sort of have this, but realistically, a volunteer commission that meets twice a month can't develop this, something of this size in a reasonable amount of time without the support of staff. So,
I agree. And somewhere down below, there was a reference to accessing or leveraging external funds. I think it was in the one of the archaeology tasks or actions rather. I was thinking the same thing, and for this one, and there are grants out there that the town can apply for to try and get money to pay for a consultant, for example, to help develop an outreach campaign. Because I think that to do this well, it's beyond the scope of what the Conservation Commission is able to pull off.
thanks, Eric. Laura?
Other people do this well. They would do this well for us. I mean, there are organizations we could partner with,
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Is there a way to reflect that in this?
We'll develop or use an outreach program.
I think within this,
Hmm.
I think it's possible that we would spend this entire town plan period gathering that information, putting together the best practices, and we might start using it. But I don't know that.
Right, I don't think it needs to directly say like an outside consultant, because if we have this goal, it's like if you're applying for a grant, it's like we're applying for assistance with an outreach program. It says the Conservation Commission will do this, we're doing it with outside help.
That's good. Yeah, that's. I kind of like the idea though of having something reflected either in a goal above or a goal below to say that this will be done in partnership with like external experts, who are adept
Okay.
or something like that.
Based on best practices from. Oh,
I think we're gonna need to move on. I don't
Yeah.
need to linger here too long, but I guess it's just, it is a sort of common theme is that a lot of this plan puts a lot of the work on the volunteer commissions, and maybe it's just assumed that staff will support it and, we can just.
Final comment on this one for me is it should probably be medium term. We're not gonna do this like next year. Right? It's
Yeah,
gonna take some time.
it's definitely gonna take some time to have that be in a mature state. I honestly, I didn't even have time to look at the reasonableness of the time frame. So thanks for calling that out, Reed. Because I didn't even look at that column, honestly.
So far, they look okay to me, planning.
Okay, and then the next one, same comment about just the extensiveness to the work that would be required.
I wonder if it seems like almost reinventing the wheel, like there's a lot of information out there already. I wonder if it's just curating it for Williston and then getting it to the right
A
people.
webpage with links to existing resources from state, from county planning, from.
What would be the harm in adding something underneath this of like 323 that says planning staff will support the development of these materials using best practices and outside resources?
Like, is there a difference in something that specifically says this task is a staff task?
There's lots of ones in the other chapters that I reviewed where staff were clearly identified as responsible.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd be in support of that.
Yeah, because I think this is incredibly important, and we'll get to that in our debrief on the ERF, but we've just been given a mandate to, do what that ballot initiative says, and so I think this is critical for that. So I want to make sure that we actually have the resources. Ooh, bless you. I want to make sure that we have the resources in time to get going. Okay, we can move on. Thank you.
Next comment is yours.
Nice. It just needs to, my cursor needs to tell me, okay, here it is. So the comment is the Conservation Commission will explore the development of the Williston Land Trust, right? So I guess we talked about this 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure where this came from because we already have an ERF and we work with land trusts to leverage the ERF fund. So I guess generally, how do other commissioners feel about spending time and effort on the creation of a land trust for Williston?
I don't think we need to do that. I know Dan Boomhauer is all about it. So if somebody wants to do it, he could just bring it to us and say, let's do this, and we can talk about it.
Yeah, I responded to the comment in here last night, David. I think for me, we've gotten clear feedback that certain types of parcel conservation proposals, Vermont Land Trust and Trust for Public Land are like, nope.
Right.
The non-starter where we can't. And so then the question becomes, who holds the easement? Even if we have the money, who holds the easement? Even if we have the money to buy the easement, who's gonna hold it? And that's been a blocker. So that's why this is in here from my memory. I don't know, Eric, if that jives with you.
It does.
So, I mean, it could be as simple as finding another town that already has created one and saying, hey, can we become joint on that trust with you? And then it can hold those trust land easements too. But
yeah, like I think Richmond has their own land trust.
Right, could we just say, hey, can it become the Richmond Williston land trust?
Yeah, I think that's covered, explore its own land trust or a multi-town land
Mhm.
trust.
What is the, what is the, for the purpose of what?
To hold easements for parcels where Vermont Land Trust and Trust for Public Land are not interested.
So we're larger, so for the
Right.
express purpose where larger land trusts are not interested in smaller parcel.
Yeah,
Statewide.
when the parcels meet the priority of the town or the local community, but not necessarily the priorities for established land trusts that have larger goals.
And maybe I'm just naive or forgive the very basic question for me, but what is the, if the ERF could just purchase those outright and then donate them to the town, what is the benefit of having the trust there?
That's a good
You-
question. That's why I'm struggling with this one too.
I mean, even if we purchase the land, there still needs to be a conservation easement on it in order for it to not be at the town's discretion to just build something on it in the future.
Yes,
So
good point.
that's,
Yep.
that's the missing piece, is like, you can buy land, but it needs to have an easement on it, otherwise, a future select board could say, you know what, we need a community center, we're gonna put it there, because we own that
Mhm.
parcel.
So can we maybe rephrase this to be a little bit less prescriptive, to say that it's not about the development of a land trust, it's about the development of public or conservation easements on public land or something like that?
Sure. Yeah, it could say, explore, avenues to establish conservation easements on parcels where larger regional land trusts are not aligned, goals are not aligned. Or where existing partners are not interested.
Hold and manage conservation easements on public land, or is that too prescriptive?
Well, it could be private land too, so,
Okay,
if we have somebody comes and says, hey, I want to conserve my parcel, can you provide financial assistance from the ERF to go through that process? They still need somebody to hold the easement, so
Right.
we still need an organization who can do that,
okay.
is willing to. Like the lady who, up on the hill on 2A came and said, hey, my family's starting to do estate planning, we'd really like to see our parcel not
Mhm.
developed. We're like, that thing is tiny, it's like 3 acres. No, we can't even go to Vermont Land Trust and say, hey, would you do this? They're gonna be like, no, get me like 20 of those that are all together and maybe we can talk, but it's just too small for them.
Okay. Good. Let's keep going. I have a feeling it's gonna take us the full allotted time just to get through chapter 13. So we've got the next comment is on 3.4.2. Conservation Commission should update the data and maps used to make decisions about the protection of natural resources. Is that should a shall or a will?
Yeah, that's mine. I was just I couldn't remember where we landed on using some of these some of these words in the plan. Jeez, there we go.
Yeah, I think we're gonna try to avoid the shoulds and consider, so that should be a will. Yeah, before we hit final prints on this, we'll do a control F for should and consider.
Does that box us into doing something where perhaps there's not a lot of value to add? Like, what if we will assess whether assess and make necessary updates to data and maps, so that if there are ones that were like, it's not a good use of our time. Not a lot has changed. I just don't want to box ourselves in feeling we have to do busy work.
Yeah, well, assess is great.
We'll assess the need
To
to
update.
update, yeah.
Or we'll make necessary updates.
Right. Well, a lot of these maps are like really old. And
Yeah, I
haven't
know
been
some of
looked
them
at in
are
a
for
long
sure
time.
need to be done, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just worried there are some that don't.
I'm okay with this. I mean,
Okay.
I think it's assumed that if it doesn't need updating, we won't update it. If it needs updating, it will be updated.
Okay.
The next comment is from me. This is about visual resource assessment. Is that right? Oh, I'm sorry, I'm looking at 13.5 right now. Create new conservation areas, parks near the growth center, which currently lacks such spaces. And I just called out, should Jacob Krantz parcel be identified here? Probably as one of the actions.
Mhm.
It did come up in the parks section
Mhm.
later. But this is about new conservation areas and parks in the growth center.
Well,
And I-
Jacob Krantz is not in the growth center.
Okay.
It's actually in the AR. Is it an ARCD?
Ooh,
Yes, abutting RZD.
It's right here. It's in the ag world.
yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's out on a technicality,
Yeah,
even though it should be connected via trails to that
right.
growth center. Okay.
By that, Birch Catamount is connected by trails to the growth center, so it's nice. Yeah.
Right.
Maybe in 20
The
years.
long trail is connected by
Yeah.
trails connecting.
Okay.
I had a comment on the one above it, 13.4.4, and this applies to not just this action, but there's several that have a lot of supporting text in the action. And I don't know, I could see how that would be helpful for context for the action, but I don't know if there's another way to present that in the table. Like maybe you just give it a couple of hard returns after the action sentence.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. I missed that comment. You're right.
Yeah, I also asked in a response whether the narrative could cover a sentence or two of background on that topic. So that when you read the actions in the section, you're like, oh yeah, it mentioned the visual assessment history in the narrative.
Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left on this agenda topic. Are we finding this useful to go through 13 line by line? Or how are people feeling? Should we try and speed this up and leave our comments to staff for interpretation?
I think this is our meat and potatoes. I think we should finish this section in this regard.
At least
and
for
then-
13.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Okay.
then the others can be more of like just a readout from each of us on.
Yes.
If we have time.
Great, good. Just want to check in and make sure we're doing this right. All right, so that's 13. And then the next one,
I had a comment on that same 13.5. Oh, are we on 13.5 now? Sorry.
I
do it back.
I think my comment was overruled, because it's out of the growth center, but go
Okay.
ahead.
Yeah, my comment on that 13.5 objective was, oh yeah, I thought, if we wanted to provide another example other than Abazim Menahanek, we could include an example of, exploring, and I hate that word as an action, but, trail connectivity south toward Five Tree Hill from the growth center
mhm.
as another example of how to, connect the growth center into existing or new.
Right. Yeah, definitely, like that would be a very strong statement, which is the town will develop like a multi-use path to Jacob Krantz. The town will develop a trail easement to Five Tree Hill. That would be the way to address both of these comments, which is to sort of, draw some connectivity from the growth center to these other existing resources.
Okay, so leave it out for now and we can just discuss it as a way to achieve
Yeah,
these.
okay. And then I wanted to just make a suggestion that we could add, Winooski Valley Parks District to build new trails consistent with the strategy of accessibility.
13.6.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's good. Thanks. Okay, Reed,
Oh, yeah, and I think given how many things we have in here, we can ignore this, but when I read through this and saw the 13.6.2, including like installing benches, I also thought, I know that improving opportunities for exercise and other health benefits for the community is important. Should we have anything here about assessing our trails to identify whether any of them are suitable to have exercise stations along them, the way that many bike paths and other trails do.
I am not the right person to
Yeah,
ask.
well, I think maybe it fits better in a parks and rec area.
Yeah.
Like assess trails and parks for exercise stations. Go ahead, Eric.
And that, I was just gonna say that kind of goes with my comment on this one too, which is I in my time with the Conservation Commission, I don't recall talking about benches
No.
at scenic vistas. So I was wondering if that falls under the purview of somebody else.
Guess if it's on a primitive trail, it might be something we need to do, but if it's on like a rec path, multi-use path, then it wouldn't be a conservation commission thing. Although there's one at the top of Piper Hill.
Yeah.
There is, and
Now that I think about it.
that's the first one that came to my mind.
That's a
But I
good
don't
one.
recall ever talking about it.
Look
I've
at.
seen it
Mhm.
moved
Look
around a
at
few
it.
times.
Yeah, Emily brought up the lookout at Mud Pond, the stadium seating there. It's another one.
There's a
Those
lookout.
are more like trail features than, these are, we're thinking like, metal benches and exercise things that go along rec
Right.
paths and parks. It's more
Yeah.
intensive than Conservation Commission.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
we're up to Laura.
Hey, I have one in there.
I think so.
well, I meant, is this the responsibility of the Conservation Commission? That got addressed, and then Eric, you said, oh, schema. In 13.7.
Yeah, I just wasn't looking at that. I'm like, what do they mean by schema?
Yeah, does that mean the structure of the management plans? Like the layout of the management plans? That's my question too.
Okay, we'll leave that for town staff to.
Yeah, I on it, like, I wonder. I don't even know if we need schema. Evaluate whether the current management plan adequately
Yes.
helps.
Agreed.
Mhm. Yep, and that could include content or form, because I do think after seeing the revised town plan, we're gonna be like, man, our management plans could probably use some reformatting too.
Yeah.
Tables for specific things that are allowed or not allowed, tables for things we're gonna do or not do, could be
Yeah.
helpful.
I would just say that management plans are kind of a big deal, especially like in, the context of public parks and open spaces and stuff like that, so it's, I don't know, there could be a lot here. I do wonder also if, I mean, there should be like clear opportunity for public review of some of these management plans as well. I did like seeing the Winooski Valley Park District in this section. We've got a comment. I don't believe it's from me.
It's from me on 13.7.4.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I think 13.7.4 can go away because we already have a stated goal of establishing the Jacob Krantz, right? It's
where?
oh, actually, no, we don't have one.
I don't think we do.
So.
'Cause I was looking for this and I was glad to see it here.
Yeah, so, okay, so I think we need to keep the thing about establishing a Jacob Krantz parcel. We don't need something that says we're going to create a management plan because that's implied when you create a park, you have to create a management plan to accompany it. So I thought this should be moved to somewhere that's more appropriate for establishing Jacob Krantz parcel as a park.
It could be moved to the section above in 13.6.
Yeah.
I think that,
Mhm.
because it's in the design phase, it's, but then what about this point for Brownell Mountain? I mean, I would, is Brownell and Jacob Krantz in the same category, basically? I think it's kind of what this,
Yeah, where do I have develop and implement management?
Brownell's directly
plans?
above it.
Create new
trying
conservation
to
areas and
scroll.
parks, so it belongs in 13.5. Right, create new conservation areas and parks. Oh, but that's in the growth center.
Yeah.
So maybe 13.5 just needs to be broadened to say. With an emphasis on the growth center.
Mhm.
Because we also have Jacob Krantz, which is not quite, it's just to the north,
Mhm.
we've got. Brownell
Right,
Mountain,
create new conservation areas and parks, prioritizing. What the heck?
the growth center or access to the population in the growth center.
I don't like that, actually. I think we've got a lot of.
Yeah,
Prioritize is a strong word, right? And we've got a lot of new parks outside of the growth center. I would actually I would suggest that we could just leave this as it is, understanding that the intent of 13.7 is for outside of the growth area. These conservation areas need to have, management plans. I don't know that we need to, mess with
so
that.
do we need to
too
take
much.
13.7.4 out then, because. It's in a section about management plans. And it's about,
Well, I mean,
but it's for a park that doesn't exist,
But
so, I guess, okay.
it needs to be developed, I guess, is the point. I guess, honestly, I would look to staff to sort of explain why it's broken out this way.
I couldn't quite say, but it sounds like there could be some restructuring, so it's like. Growth center and everywhere else
Mhm.
are side by side, but separate.
Mhm. Yeah, we might need a separate strategy for establishing new parks and conservation areas, not in the growth center.
Yeah.
Could I say something?
Hey, Chapin.
Hi, Chapin.
Just from the planning commission perspective, part of this from our perspective was the green areas on the regulation plan for the growth center. For instance, Burr Oak Hill with the water tower on it. We basically, for equity, wanted to have more places that people who live in the growth center could walk, and not just to farther away places, but within the growth center. Thanks.
Yeah, that, I think I at least understood that, like, there's, so like, there's a value for having 13.5.
Without
And
saying prioritizing in the growth center.
Right, and there's a value to having 13.6. And there's, I guess the 13.7 is kind of worded a little bit differently, which is if you've got 5 is about having something in the growth center, 6 is about having accessibility features throughout, and 7 is about things going on outside of the growth center.
7 was about management plans.
Yeah,
So we need a new 13.6 that's about establishing conservation areas and parks outside the growth center. And then current 13.7 can remain about management plans,
Mhm.
because Brownell Mountain wouldn't be establishing. It's already conserved, but it's not a park.
Yeah.
But we have identified that it needs a management plan.
I think, for the sake of moving on, I think we should just point out for staff here that, like, there seems to be some discrepancy with, like, either the structure or the
Mhm.
order of this, and it would be helpful to sort of
I
look
think
at
this
this
can be
organization.
consolidated, and I think one of the major feedback points I heard from the select board was how many thousands of actions we had.
Yeah,
And when I reread these, I think they can be consolidated quite a bit and still have the same effect.
yeah,
Unlike growth center, this conservation area for Finney Crossing, I believe is the landlocked parcel north of the Allenbrook potentially, that's not in the growth center. So it might just make sense to
mhm,
talk about them growth center and non-growth center in the same thing. And then you figure out your strategy to prioritize um outside of this structure.
so maybe we're talking about the schema of,
You're funny.
okay, great. We should move on, but I was happy to see Brownell Mountain and Jacob Krantz. And
Yeah.
I think this conversation also just highlights for me that, especially given Brownell Mountain, a particular emphasis on public access. And I'll just add that as a comment and sort of on the fly. I do not want my software distribution right now. Thank you. Okay. Let's see. We have about 5 minutes left to wrap up this section. I don't know if we're gonna
I have the next one on 13.7.6, I'm pretty sure.
cohabitating.
Okay.
13. Yeah, I have a cohabitating, devillainizing seems polarizing. Oh, devillainizing wildlife. Oh, I missed the.
That was me.
Okay.
I was just reading like devillainizing. Ah, that doesn't sound like a good town word, a town plan word.
We have, yeah, in the one above it.
Yeah, so 13.7.6. I don't think it's reasonable for us to develop an action plan. Well, I guess we could develop an action plan for managing invasives, but I think there needs to be a goal somewhere in here around making it easy for town folk of all ages to volunteer. Because
Yeah.
what are we gonna put in our action plan if we don't have easy volunteer opportunities for people to get involved?
So I agree 100%, Reed. I don't know that there must be another place in the town plan that includes community engagement.
Yeah, I did I searched for volunteer and there's no other action that mentions addressing our volunteer situation. So my
Huh.
recommendation is
All right.
something needs to be there and it needs to be cross-referenced and say our plan for invasives involves volunteers.
Yeah, that's a good call out.
What chapter 8 is recreation and parks, volunteer programs.
Yeah, we can leave it to staff to figure out where that is, but.
If you're looking for
I
another
think it should
word,
simply say.
if you're looking for another word to put in, as I came to you last meeting, I think it was, and mentioned, I would really like Williston to have an official weed warriors organization. And so it could be establish a weed warriors program. And sort of assumed in that is that there's some mechanism for people to join it without having to be over 18 and having such an onerous process for volunteering.
I mean, I don't have a problem with your suggestion, Chapin. I think, it might change names,
Weed warrior versus
by
something.
next, yeah, it might just become something else
Mhm.
next year or two. So, okay, I've also added a comment under this to say, having a process for volunteers. Okay, and then let's talk about devillainizing wildlife for a sec. That was Eric's.
Yep.
Eric also had a question about why there was money associated with 13.7.6. don't know if you want to go there first, Eric.
Um, yeah, I mean, if it's right now, I guess I was just wondering why there's a cost to it if it's planning staff and conservation doing it. But if we're gonna hire a consultant to
Mm.
develop the action plan, then maybe there would be a cost.
I think it's more that sometimes volunteers just can't take care of the amount of invasives in one place, and they need to hire somebody to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
13.76.
that makes sense. But
Right,
the way
let's-
I'm reading that is like that 13.7.6 is just developing the list and developing an action plan, not actually managing the invasives.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think a consultant would be the reason to have money associated with it.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think of like summer or seasonal employees who would for, 4 days out of the week, do some of this work on their own and one day of the week organize a volunteer event. That's like the Fellowship of the Wheel model.
Mhm.
Um,
Do a little bit themselves and then do some volunteer coordination.
right, exactly.
Okay.
Okay.
Then I would say let's maybe modify that language in the action that includes management of invasive species. Something like
Implement an invasives management program such as Weed Warriors.
yeah.
That would make it be its own
Yeah,
action.
that would be a new action.
Yeah.
Well, I think implement a management plan, like inherent in that is coming up with a prioritization list
Yeah.
on town.
I think we do need to get into the actual doing
How
of
about
it. This
how
town
about
plan.
develop and implement the management plan?
Mhm.
Yeah, during 8 years, if we wait 8 years before we start working on it, we're gonna be buried. It's gonna be too late for a lot of these.
Right.
invasive
And that's
species.
I think the time frame is short term is good for this one,
Good.
as in
Let's keep
tomorrow.
going. We're at time. I'll give this 5 more minutes. Given that we have like 3 more pages, we might be able to finish this.
Mhm.
We gotta get out of the weeds.
Okay, Eric, do you wanna get rid of this word? Or should we just move on?
Yeah, I think we can find another word for
I
that,
think,
but
yeah, the staff can wordsmith that one.
Great,
Reduce fear.
okay. Then we've got a question also, Eric, from 1392, review regulatory requirements for events and event space. Eric's question is, are these town regulations, and if so,
Yeah.
state bylaws?
We missed Laura's comment, so you know, on 1391.
Oh,
How do I keep
I just
missing
said
these?
reduce fear. Oh,
No, 1391 periodically is the word you didn't like.
oh, oh, yeah, I did. Yeah, what does that even mean?
Yeah, I agree with that one. I think that was a good catch, Laura.
Mhm. There you go.
Check,
Yeah.
Done.
just,
So,
okay, so the question from Eric is 1392 in regard to town regulations, state regulations, or other?
I think this is beyond townland. I think diverse allowed uses of working landscapes. And keep them open while providing necessary income to landowners. I think that's like in the RZD and ARZD.
Yeah, it wouldn't be suitable in the other, just in the other zones.
Okay. Eric, any follow up there?
I mean, my comment and 1392 was just regulatory requirements seemed vague, but if it's okay, then that's fine. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it.
Right, because I think that's both zoning, land use, and like the town's event policy.
Policies as well, okay. Okay. So would it be harmful to say town regulatory requirements? So that it's clear it's not state requirements?
Right, and then another wordsmithing right below it. Outreach to Williston working landowners just says barriers and opportunities to
Yeah.
maintaining their working landscapes.
Yeah, that one I just felt like they needed some context. Barriers and opportunities to what?
What about the word open space, Eric? Is that the word that's missing? Because open space is inclusive of conserved land and also working landscapes. Basically undeveloped land.
Yeah, that's fine. That works too.
I just added that since Emily had a technical glitch.
Thank you.
Yeah. We don't need to get into this.
Yeah.
The Mountain View water tower parcel is gated off, so it's not really, I don't really know what you could do with that. Since
Gated off.
The water tower parcel seems like an incompatible use to have a community garden at it because it's gated off.
Mm.
So like it could be moved up so there's a parking area. And I don't think we should confine by whether there's a gate somewhere right now or not.
Oh, it's just a physical gate. It's not like it has a easement or restriction on it.
No, it literally
it's
has
just a physical gate.
It's
right
to
at
prevent people
Mountain
from
View.
driving up to the water tower.
Yeah.
Oh, right, like, oh, I see. If that were to become a public park, you're right, we'd have to
You
bump
have to
that gate.
adjust the access, yeah.
Yeah, it's not a big comment.
Oh, okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Are we in 13-10-1?
I think so.
Um,
And two, actually.
yeah, I didn't know. The location that came to mind for me is I'm pretty sure the town owns a triangular piece that's between Slate Barn Road and the Federated Church parking lot. Lambert Lane, at the end of Lambert Lane,
Mhm.
and that is highly visible, accessible. And it's currently open, it's not forested, so that was another location that seemed like a good example of where the town could develop. Community agricultural lands.
Mhm.
That was but we can leave that with you, Emily, to decide whether it's too much text to have in there. But I saw there was an example of Mahan Farm, water tower parcel, and immediately I thought, well, and also that triangle over by the Federated Church parking lot.
So add that to the list.
That was my suggestion, was to add it to the list of examples of areas to look at.
And I don't know if it's called Lambert Lane Meadow, but that's what I'm gonna call it.
Yeah, Lambert Lane, I'm sure, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I think that these other comments are pretty straightforward and we're now past time.
And we're on the last one.
And yeah, I think we can officially say that we got through it. And so, for the next meeting, maybe we can just do a very quick run through of the other chapters that the, commissioners reviewed
Mhm.
this week and, probably have about the same amount of time for 7 times the number of chapters, so.
Yeah, this is the biggest one, I think.
Yeah.
This is big,
Correct.
yeah, everyone's, yeah.
For sure. Okay,
Yeah, I
great.
have like 5 sentences to say about my 3 chapters, so.
Good.
It'll be a
It'll
lot
be
faster,
easier, yeah.
I mean, there were a couple more in mind that I wanted to just flag for everyone's awareness, so I think there will be,
And I
we'll
think-
plug through.
These other items, we can probably get that through them really quickly, so if we have like the last 15 minutes of our meeting, maybe we can jump into another chapter really briefly.
Okay,
So the next item is Glazer. Your recommendation from December 18th was about eliminating that multi-use court in the middle of the recreation path because of the habitat corridor.
Yeah.
So they did that, the DRB agreed with that. However, the DRB felt that something else needed to be added for this project to score in the neighborhood amenities growth management category. And I'm shifting over to the civil set. So what they're proposing is something similar. Have you been to the park at the annex?
I've not yet been there, but
I'm
I
not sure if they're
I
plowing
know
the
Chapin
path.
went.
But it has these
I have.
natural play elements.
I've been there.
Cool, okay.
So they copied that. I kind of told them, "Listen, consider this as an idea." So balance beams, boulder jumps, benches, picnic tables. They're doing that on either end of the path, so that multi-use court was a little bit more in the middle.
Mhm.
And they're putting this on either side. So here's the homes on the loop road. And then farther up on this side would be the cul-de-sac. So the question to you guys is, do you have any feedback for the DRB on this modification?
I like it a lot better, and anyone can use those.
Mhm.
It's, okay,
In public, because they're on the paths.
okay,
So you're on page 23 of 41.
Mhm.
Just trying to navigate there myself to sort of get a sense of like where.
And I see Chapin has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Chapin.
Yes, I just want to make a comment specifically about this change, which is the features I don't want to comment on, but it looks like they still are using our street tree list for the selection of trees there. And those are not the species that should be in this location. There should be it should be all native trees, and unfortunately, our street tree list includes quite a few non-natives, and they can be taller trees. I'd like to see things like bitternut hickory, shagbark hickory, basswood, sugar maple, hackberry. I wouldn't want to see red maple because there's tons of red maple already just west of that. But anyway, that was my comment, was that the tree species should be made native.
Okay, thanks for making the observation for us.
I'd support that.
yeah, and any shade trees possible, yeah.
And then my only other comment was, we had talked about making sure that there's a significant buffer on both sides, and this is the first time I'm seeing, I'm trying to get to that page myself. First time I'm seeing the plantings,
Mhm.
landscaping, doesn't look like it's broad on the two sides there, and it's supposed to basically, we're trying to create a new habitat corridor because we're losing the existing habitat corridor, which would be to the right, following this path and then turning into Glacier Court. That is the current habitat corridor and it's being removed. And so to compensate for that, we wanted to create this new northwest southeast corridor through the wetlands, which is just below what's shown here on the top portion. So I just want to make sure that the landscaping extends, I think we said 30 feet on each side. And native species, but this looks narrower than I expected on the landscaping, looked more like trees along a path rather than a deep landscaping buffer on both sides.
Oh, shoot, I didn't link that. I think I double linked the.
Yeah. They both are the same document.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, I was just trying to pull up our recommendations too. I'll go off of Reed's memory and just kind of echo a comment that if this looks like a I think we wanted this to look a little bit more like a rural corridor
Path, yeah.
rather than like a Finney crossing, urbanized.
So recommendation one, with respect to the significant wildlife habitat area, I'm gonna share this.
I wanted to see what there's some specific language we had used.
The WCC recommends modify the proposed landscape buffer along the east and west side of the recreation path and along the western boundary from a type 2 buffer dense plantings to a type 3 buffer informal plantings and enhance the function of the hedgerow as a wildlife corridor. Plant species that align with the recommendations of the HDA.
Yeah, and I don't think they've followed the plant species that are recommended in the HDA, because those would have all been native from the biologist. Yeah, and this doesn't mention a certain number of feet, but is there a typical number of feet that's associated with type 2 or type 3?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't quite
I don't know these
appreciate
things.
the dense versus informal
Yeah.
as a,
I always have to read
Dense-
it every
dense
single
is-
time. I've been reading it
dense
like
is like
1,000 times.
a row of whatever they're called, like
Mhm.
the emerald something, the arborvitae,
Yeah,
like a hedgerow is dense, and what we want is like things spaced out.
Right.
So there's
Yeah.
easy movement of species through, but there's a sense of cover, so they feel comfortable using the corridor.
yeah, and that western boundary was thinking more on the north side where they were proposing the type 2, they were proposing that dense
Mhm.
hedgerow, the arborvitae's, and that's the key habitat area that we're trying to link. So a type 2 buffer is screening vegetation or hedge that is supplemented on the exterior side by a type 3 or 4 buffer. And a type 3 buffer is minimum density of plantings per 100 feet, full ground cover, 2 major trees, 3 ornamental or understory trees, and combination of shrubbery or flowering beds that occupy at least 50% of the area at time of planting.
Okay,
so I can't pull this up for whatever reason, the link is not letting me see sheet number 20 on the revised plan. But if what you showed us earlier of just like basically park trees doesn't seem like it's meeting that standard. Is that kind of what we're,
it looks like there's interspersed trees and shrubs and stuff, but they're all linear, there's no depth off of the path, and the whole point is if there's not continuous cover, then the animals won't use it. So I would expect the plantings on the
there we go.
top, upper, above and below the path to extend all the way to the existing tree line and
I
So
don't
where are
know.
the shrubs on this?
the ones that don't circles around them.
There's a lot of things going on here. Like, what is this dotted line? What are all these? I haven't seen.
Limits of the wetland buffer. So this line is limits of the wetland buffer. The blue line is the wetland.
So the
this is
south is not
also-
so bad. We're on the east side, it's not so bad.
This would be north. This Mountain View Road would be right here.
Yeah, Mountain View Road is up going
North-
to the
North is
right.
to the right,
Yeah.
yeah, so on the east side or the bottom side of what we're seeing here, it looks like the plantings just about get you to the wetland buffer, which will have natural vegetation growing up. But on the upper side,
So the other recommendation, number 5, for the segment of recreation path connecting the 2 neighborhoods, which is what we're looking at. Limit mowing to the edges of the path to allow vegetation beyond the path to grow up and enhance a corridor between the forested area to the west, which is. I'm showing on the north. On the top side. Of the page. To the forested area to the west and wetland area to the northeast, following the alternate wildlife travel corridor shown in the HDA.
are you able to zoom out a little bit from this? Or go to where the spur goes off to the west from the path? Eric's not gonna be able to see what I'm pointing at, but to the right and left of the spur that goes off
right here.
yes, right there where the plus sign magnifying glass is. On either side of that, it looks like there's no. Yes, perfect. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about is everywhere from the path to the wetland buffer should have plantings. Because otherwise there's gonna be gaps with no cover and that's not gonna lead to an effective corridor habitat, wildlife corridor. So I just want to bring that up, that what I see here doesn't look like the spirit of what we talked about, which was we're trying to create a new habitat corridor, and that means we need cover for animals to move across this rec path.
Right, I think generally this landscape map leaves a lot for uncertainty around whether or not they have met that requirement. And so I think the general feedback should be, please resubmit a planting map that clearly demonstrates the consistency with the recommendation of protecting that wildland corridor.
And as far as the elements, the exercise elements out here, anybody
I don't.
has any concern with them, I think.
Yeah, so this just, this dotted line,
There won't actually be a path there.
right, that's symbology for the floating trail
Yeah.
easement.
Yeah.
So I'll give feedback to the DRB that the park elements that are being shown are acceptable. But
The
some work needs to
species
be
and the
done on
location of
species and
plantings.
location of plantings.
It needs to extend to the wetland buffers.
Yeah, right.
Otherwise,
Right now, it looks like a copy and paste Photoshop of just like, a tree, a shrub, a tree, a shrub along the path. And I think what we want to see is a more concerted effort to demonstrate that there's connectivity between these two wetland areas.
And on the northern end, so this is where originally they were showing the arborvitae hedge. And they're providing,
the more sparse plantings.
mhm.
I don't have a problem with that. I know that we just saw on the last meeting, we saw that there's gonna be a house going in just above to the west of that red hatched area, so. Which we can't see on here, but there's gonna be a home up there, and I just wonder what they think about not having a visual break there, but.
Well, the DRB discussed that there can be some. To preserve a scenic vista with at least the street trees in this right of way. Like doing smaller height street trees and spacing them, so. The existing home and that proposed home.
Don't lose their visibility.
Mhm. So because this is the edge of that existing home.
Okay,
And have the tree and plant selection be consistent with the habitat disturbance assessment using like native
Mhm.
varietals. And that, I think, sums up our recommendation. Okay,
that wasn't so hard.
nothing about Glacier was hard.
This is easy, yeah.
Okay, town fair on Green Up Day.
Yeah, so May 3rd, a little over 2 months, well, less than 2 months away is Town Fair on Green Up Day. It's gonna be a similar format to the past years where the town is gonna rent the tent and tables. We'll have additional vendor booths with people providing their own tables. We've put out the call for vendors for nonprofits and businesses and non-town affiliated groups. So I let Reed know for Sustainable Williston, if they wanted to submit an application. And ultimately we'll be determining the mix of booths, at the event. We town-wise might be consolidating some of the town boards and committees and services, just to have a better display setup. Higher quality and quantity in a smaller space. And then thinking about ideas for any demonstrations or activities you would want to provide on the green at the event, as well as the actual greening up. So we're going to do a similar model to the past years where folks sign up either on our paper map here or the Green Up Day app and helping folks with routes. There are some trickier parts of town where folks that have, tall wader boots and strong stamina to go down steep roadsides, is really important. Where some of the easier roads with sidewalks, the general public might be more willing to take on.
My son is excited to do Blueberry Swamp again this year. That's his goal.
Oh, good. All right, nice.
Goes, are we gonna do Blueberry Swamp again? When's Green Up Day?
Yeah, so if you know of a organization in town that might be interested in participating in the Green Up Day event, let me know. I can send them the call for partners form. And then stay tuned for actual greening up details and more event details on how town boards and committees will be involved at the event. Hopefully by then, we're rolling out some more information about the town plan for the public. I think Eric and the library trustees are thinking about the library project, if there's anything they want to do at the event to talk about that. So it should be a fun event.
Do we have any more no mow May signs for distribution?
I will have to double check on that.
That is always a huge thing for Green Up Day.
Dozens of people come through and get them. So a lot of people last year came through and said, oh, I still have mine from last year, which is great because it means they didn't just throw it away and they can reuse it. But yeah, new people definitely came through last year getting them. So
Do we I mean, yeah, are we gonna, we should put this on the agenda for future too, but that's also a good time to start wildflower gardens and native reseeding opportunities.
I haven't thought about that, but I saw Chapin also has a hand.
Yeah, I saw that too. Chapin, I assume that you're still hanging out as a member of the planning commission?
No, just as a member of the public. And actually my hand was up because I wanted to add a couple things to the glacier discussion. But on this current discussion, Emily's done a fantastic job of getting this to be interesting, but it's a new event. And we will have the town band for the second time. I can speak as member of the band. But things that would get people there, I was wondering like if Parks and Rec could have sign up for summer camps or something, because what we need is more traffic. And any ideas you have for Emily that would get more traffic coming in would be good. And so, David, let me know when I could say some things about Glacier that are not part of your agenda item, but are related.
So I guess I need a point of clarification. We did have public comments at the beginning, and I guess you might as well say it now, Chapin, I guess.
Okay.
Or we
I can say it really quickly.
Go for it.
It's that the area to the west of where we were just talking about, that connecting path, is very wet, is forested, and is heavily infested with buckthorn and other invasives. And so those will try to move into the area you were just talking about. And so this is not part of your recommendation, but I just wanted to say you as a planning commission should be aware that you're going to want to manage invasives in that area. And similarly, the wetland that corridor goes to the east of there between the two new roads, that wetland has been hayed for years. And now that it's not, it will grow up with invasives. And so there will want to be something like a concerted effort to like live stake plant dogwoods and willows and so forth. So I just wanted to make that comment for you that this corridor is going to need some ongoing maintenance. And then the other thing is maybe just for Emily, which is the plan still has the path coming from Mountain View Road down to Glacier Avenue or whatever it's called on the east side of that road, which means that when that rec path is completed along Mountain View, if you were coming from the west, from Taft Corners area, and you wanted to come into this natural area that we're just talking about, you would cross Glacier Road and then go down along Glacier Road and then cross it again. And it seems to me there should be a single crossing for the public rec path, and it should be at the main intersection close to Mountain View Road, and that path should come down there, right at the top of there. That path that's on the lower, which is the east side of that road, should be on the other side of it, in my view, because it's awkward the way it's designed, and it looks like it's designed that way because the developer is developing the rec path to that's along Mountain View just to that point, rather than crossing that road. But in the long view, that rec path is going to be a big corridor running from the west through. And so that maybe just a comment for you, Emily, to manage however you could, but because it's more for the DRB, do they really want that rec path running that way? Thanks.
Yeah, I can address that comment. So, the staff report is gonna ask them to extend the path to the property line, and construct the crossing over Glazer Court. This path parallels what's proposed to be the town-owned parcel. And there's statements that where a multi-use path is provided, the DRB can waive that sidewalk requirement on the other side. That other side of the road is what was marked as another one of the habitat corridors. So the staff report's gonna be asking for more of those low-lying hedge plantings interspersed with the trees here on that top side or west side of that road to enhance that corridor. Whereas adding that path would, make it challenging to do those additional plantings. Chapin, your point earlier about the way this path where it's near unit 70, it had 290-degree angles. They softened it out. So they had the 290-degree angles because the intent was if this road were to continue through, this sidewalk would continue straight. That might not happen for a very long time. And even if it did, you probably would do a Y where you maintain this gentle curve and then it curves off in that direction.
I did see that improvement, Emily.
Yeah, and I guess even if it was on the west side, Chapin, it would eventually that road may connect through and you might still be crossing a road anyway, so it's hard to say which is better. In the short term, I expect more traffic from the village and the residential area to the east. So I actually think this will involve fewer road crossings in the short term, but in the long term, people like David coming from Brennan Woods will be coming from the west side.
In 30 years.
Yep.
That's right.
30 years, if you're still biking.
30 by 50.
Okay.
Cool. Thank you, Chapin.
Thanks, Chapin. Okay, I think that's probably good for Green Up Day, although I'm sure.
Actually,
Can
I just ask
Go ahead.
ask Emily a quick couple questions on Green Up Day? Emily, do we have a approximate head count-ish for people who have attended, the number of people that have attended Green Up Day in the past?
So the people who attend the town fair event on the green has been quite low. I think last year it was less than 100 people total. I have to look at our tallies for the actual greening up. It's really hard to get a tally because when people get bags nights and weekends, a lot of them don't fill out this sheet with how many volunteers. But I'd estimate we probably have, probably more like 200 or 300 green up volunteers. Just based off of the number of bags that we do give out, we give up around 500 to 700 bags.
Yep. Okay.
Mhm.
I think somebody mentioned ideas for other draw things that draw people in. I find that food works pretty well. I know you guys have had like cookies and granola bars and stuff like that.
REI has their make your own trail mix.
That's right.
station.
Yeah. Yep. Free ice cream is a pretty good draw even at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, maybe.
Yeah, and the event has had low turnout, but each year the amount of trash we pick up goes up. Whether that means more people are greening up or more people are littering, I don't know. But
Maybe both.
or both.
I have a feeling that with all the snow, it's gonna be a bad year. 'Cause
Oh, yeah.
people just toss and toss and,
If Emily, I think you mentioned there's I forget I don't recall what you said exactly, but a form or something if groups want to send a table or have an exhibit at the tent or in the tent area.
Yeah, and I'll drop it in
Great.
the
Perfect.
chat. Yeah, and I did reformat it a bit this year to ask a little bit more pointedly, how our what demonstration or activity are you offering? Those are things that we advertise in advance, like the trail mix station or
Mhm.
Rotary Club's done the plant giveaway. Are you doing raffles or eco-friendly giveaways? Leading a route and really asking people to help promote the event, or helping contribute to the event to bring people out.
Okay. Yeah, I might talk to taking off my conservation hat, commission hat, putting on my Lake Champlain Basin Program hat. And I'll talk to our staff and see if this might be a good opportunity for some of our outreach folks to attend. We can bring like we have like a tabletop size watershed model that can use to demonstrate how water runs off of mountains and through neighborhoods and eventually ends up in the lake and how it gets polluted and stuff like that. That's kind of a fun little thing to do.
I remember those are fun.
Yeah, no, I wanna do that. I imagine
Yeah.
it's probably for kids, but.
Hey, Reed, do you have your hand?
Yeah, real quick, Sustainable Williston is considering doing, seed starting and seed swapping. I know that the Dorothy Ivanmore Library, Bonnie, I think, brought seeds the last 2 years for swapping, so we might partner up with her to like pool different sources for seeds that people could either take or swap. And we might do something where people can actually take pots and actually do seed starting there and then take their seed starters home, to grow. So that just for awareness of what Sustainable Williston might do. And then in terms of things that I'd like to discuss with the Conservation Commission in an upcoming meeting would be things like how can we keep going with Nomo May and the rewilding, the pollinator garden demonstration project. We have photos from the last year of how it progressed and how it looked at the end of the year, which was beautiful. So it might be a cool demonstration to have like a photo timeline of this is what in 1 year, what we're able to do in terms of a pollinator garden.
Would you be able to have that,
Well, so
present those photos at like a future meeting?
yeah, so I can reach out to Deb Muccio and ask if she could help us put a good set of photos together, because I know she took some as well.
Yeah, and if you guys are able to get things to a point of, I just have to hit print. We have the plotter, so in the past, we've done, like with the town plan or form-based code, we put a bunch of things together on a giant, like 24 by 36 collage and printed that off and could hang it on the back of the tent, so.
Right, okay,
If you guys get things to a point that's ready to be printed, then we can, either have them hanging off the front of the table or handouts on the table or use the back of the tent. Because we have a lot of printers, we have laminators here.
okay.
Yeah.
And then if we, one other topic would be what happens next with ERF? Now that Article 6 passed, what happens next? And it's a good opportunity to bring people who traditionally do not pay attention to conservation funding. They had to see an item on the ballot. And so there might be an opportunity to have a conversation about how are we going to go about using that money. So there you go.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we have an answer though.
Well, between now and then, we might want to think about at least a high level answer.
Yeah, I mean,
So I think Reed just mentioned it, but I thought Dave had some big announcement he wanted to share about ballot
Yeah.
Article 6. Is there anything you wanted to share, Dave?
Yeah, that's a good lead into the next agenda
yeah,
item.
so let's go to the next agenda item. The ERF ballot item, Article 6 passed with 75% approval.
Good.
That is a blowout in any election, for sure, and very consistent, actually, which I was surprised by, but very consistent with that informal survey of how many Williston residents would support
Even if it meant
funding.
taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great win. I'm very excited for that final vote tally because that gives us even more power next year to ask for the same amount or a consistent amount. We can talk about it later, but yeah, so good work to everyone, and thank you to Reed for a great website, and
Yeah, that was.
Laura, Gary,
Posts were great.
and Eric all had great letters to the editor, front porch forum posts. It was
Illegal though they may have been.
Well,
Well,
the superintendent said to vote for the school budget, so. Signed as the
that's an
superintendent.
appointed position. It's not an elected. Yes.
So running the numbers on the vote, 2,032 people voted on the ERF thing. That's 13 more people than voted on the general town budget. And 229 people said no to the town budget, than the ERF budget. So 515 people said no to the ERF, 744 said no to the overall town
Yeah,
budget. So it's interesting numbers.
yeah, you had people voting against the town budget, but for the ERF.
Same with the school budget. We outperformed the school budget as well, was 70% rather than 75. So
Mhm.
Also good, strong showing for the
Yes.
school, which I'm very happy.
yes, yeah, very pleased with that.
Yeah,
Dave, I noticed the last name of the new library trustee. Is that a connection to you?
yes, that is my wife. Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. 5 years. She had been serving already in this capacity, but.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that's a good segue as well. We still
Oh,
have
Laura.
Oh, no, go ahead.
a strong need for volunteers. So Ellie Beckett got elected to the select board. That's gonna open up a seat on the planning commission, whether it'll be a regular or alternate is TBD. You guys still have a vacancy and there's PRD vacancies as well. So
Yeah.
word of mouth on encouraging people to apply for these positions, is much helpful, much needed.
A way to apply at the town fair might be a good, like a sheet where people can write down, hey, please email me more information on how to sign up for this
Mhm.
opening.
I can just see Matt having people sign up, like, sign here. They mean
And
it.
the select board can be there, they can have a
We could
booth,
be
and
there
they
to-
can appoint you there.
Like a Las Vegas wedding or wedding, right? It's like we're just in a little booth.
It's really just, are you available at 7 AM on Wednesdays or 7 PM on Tuesdays?
Yes.
One or the other.
Yes.
I
Laura,
just had a quick thing about upcoming meetings before we run out of time, and I think I mentioned this last time, but if we could put on the agenda for next time, the letter for from the director of the Vermont Master Naturalist, and she would like to come. So I don't know if we can put a time like later in the meeting,
okay,
at 8:30 or whatever,
And that would be on the 319 agenda.
if that's possible.
Okay,
and you think 20 minutes is 15, 20 minutes is all?
15, 20 minutes. Yeah, sure. Mhm.
Great,
alrighty.
conservation planner recruitment,
I heard some good news.
Yes,
To the grapevine.
we have somebody hired,
Oh, yay.
great.
or at least there's like an offer letter that we're waiting to get back. I'm not quite sure the
I
details,
heard there's
but
a verbal.
it sounds like the first week of
Interesting.
April would be the target start date.
Hmm.
Okay.
They'll be here by Green Up Day.
So they would be here by Green Up Day. They would still be very green.
Yes.
But a good introduction to the community.
Does that position, I didn't see the job posting or anything, but does that come with some expectations for doing things like any volunteer coordination, or was it specifically for conservation planner, or was it posted as like a general planner?
Was posted as the conservation planner, and I would have to defer to Matt on
Yeah,
if anything was changed about the job description from, Andrew and Simon's terms as
Okay.
conservation planner.
Mhm,
great, exciting.
Very exciting.
mhm.
Hopefully they will be here soon.
Yeah. It was tough. The 4 candidates were all really, really strong and would have all been
Wow.
equally
Oh, that's
qualified
great.
and good.
We'll take
fits.
2. I mean, if you want.
Well,
We need some
an
staff.
assistant, don't we?
Yeah.
Still? Yeah. it'd be
An
assistant.
assistant to the assistant. Yeah.
Assistant to the region manager. Cool. Alrighty.
Excellent. Well, very exciting week. Busy agenda item, but I think we've gone through it. Anything else before we wrap up?
Kim says she's doing well. Eric and I texted with Kim.
Oh,
She said her work's going well. The funding seems secure,
Mm,
right? So it's good to hear.
mhm. At least something's working.
Oh, Sustainable Williston is having our monthly social. So a couple people reached out and said, hey, is there gonna be a party to celebrate the Article 6 passing? And I said, well, not an official party, but we have our monthly social on March 13th. It's next Thursday. It is 7 to 8, 6:30 to 8 PM at the Goodwater Brewery down on Marshall Ave. And they
Nice.
have food and drink, and there's usually trivia going on if you are into trivia. And yeah, anybody who would like to come and gonna just hang out and celebrate the fact that it passed, please feel free to come.
Thanks, Reed.
Sounds fun.
I think we should put the ERF on the agenda for the next meeting in a more substantial way, other than, obviously this is exciting news, but I do think that I had the same thought as Reed, which is that now that everybody's aware of it, they're gonna wanna know what's being done with it. And so I think we need to start working on that long-term plan of now that we are fully funded, or close to it, what are we gonna do with it? Would anyone have any objections to that being added to the agenda?
Should it
Nope,
be?
I think it's a great
next?
idea.
Yeah.
Next time or the time after.
Yeah, I would, depending on availability, like, I think we should probably spend at least a half an hour talking through what the next few years should look like as far as, our focus on it.
The town plan chapter feedback, Emily, that needs to be done at the next meeting, right? Because it needs to be integrated.
Yeah. Mhm.
So that's the only thing I'm concerned about, Dave, is like, do we have time next time? Because the town plan feedback has to get in.
And Emily, I believe I'm supposed to be doing chapter 14 for town plan, the watershed health chapter.
Yes.
Yeah, well, let's try to squeeze that in for now. We got an hour for town plan. I think that'll, yeah, I think we'll all probably be pretty exhausted. Not want to talk about it anymore after that.
Yes, it will be like the 10th meeting that we've
Yeah.
been talking about it, so.
Yeah.
Not the first time.
Yeah, and I'll send her letter to you and to Emily, I guess. The director's letter for Vermont Master Naturalist.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent. Great. Thanks, everyone. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you. Yeah, great job, everyone.
Oh, Simon Miles
Eric.
just emailed about the year.
Oh,